Chairman. Mr. Lieberman ended on a bright note. I'll start on a bright note. Some of the things that are working, and we've talked about this before, in fact, every time we have a hearing or a meeting in private, some of the programs like the Train and Equip program, 1206, 1207, 1208, the IMET program, the CERT program, CCIF, those programs are working well. Admiral Stavridis, I would ask you, with some of these things that have been changed recently, like in the 1207, the whole reason for structuring these programs the way they're structured with DOD is so that they can be activated quickly and get an immediate response. Now we're kind of going the other direction with the 1207. Do you want to comment on that?
Senator, first of all, I completely agree that the 1206 and the IMET programs have been superb, and I think each of the combatant commanders has testified to that over the last couple of years, and I benefited from them greatly in 3 years at U.S. Southern Command and continue to be a strong advocate here at U.S. European Command. 1207 money is kind of dual key between state and Department of Defense. I think that anytime there's a dual key, it's going to take a little bit longer to work through the challenges. So some of that immediacy that is so valuable in the 1206 funding is not as readily available in the 1207. But we're committed to work with our partners in state and make it go as rapidly as we can.
Of course, I understand that's civilian to civilian. Right. Are you satisfied with the funding level of the CCIF program?
Yes, sir.
All right. General Mattis, with all the great things that are happening in simulation and modeling now, as you know, yesterday we broke ground on the new building for the JFETS program. And by the way, I appreciate very much your personal attention going down and watching that. I mean, we have people from all over the world there under our IMET program. I think some 250 coalition members are being trained by this JFETS program. So just another example of how IMET is working. It also an example of how the JFETS program is working. And why don't you just give us an update as to what you think is happening in terms of the things with the JFETS programs?
Thanks, Senator. You know this is an issue near and dear to my heart. In preparing our troops, which is ultimately my responsibility, we cannot do it as efficiently or as effectively or as cheaply, I might add, as we can in real world as we could using simulation. One of the biggest challenges we face is breaking the old paradigm that somehow simulators are good for Navy submarines, good for aviation, good for ship drivers, good for ballistic missile defense preparations, but somehow we leave the people who take 80% of our casualties off the ledger. So we're going forward very strongly with this from the small unit level to how we integrate joint ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and more importantly, joint fires, because as we distribute our forces more broadly on the battlefield, we need to reduce the risk to them. That means they can access joint ISR and know what's over the next hill. That means they can access and use joint fires. And the installation out in your district, I'll just tell you, sir, is absolutely critical to the maturation of this.
Yeah, I think the best way to break that paradigm is to get the people out there to see it.
Yes, sir.
Because it's one of these things that you can't explain to someone the actual conditions that they experience out there. Just, it's mind-boggling.
Yes, sir. And we have a couple of programs to do that right now, and we're getting a lot of interest. We've actually had significant support from this committee.
Yeah, good. General Ward, of course, as you well know, I've been very interested in Africa. In fact, I've been criticized for the amount of time that I spend in Africa, and I was very strongly in support of, back when we had it was hard for me to understand why we would have had Africa, the continent, under 3 commands as we did, and now things I think are working. As I've told you before, I would have preferred to have the headquarters in Africa, someplace down there. I know the political problems that come with that, but let's start with, I was recently in Djibouti, talked to Admiral Fitzgerald and to Rear Admiral Kurta, And, you know, that's heavy lifting over there. But everything is happening there. Kind of briefly tell us what is happening in Djibouti and what are some of the successes there.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for your support to the command and also to our security efforts on the continent. We feel it and we appreciate it. In Djibouti, as you know, the Combined Joint Task Force Horn of Africa, we assumed responsibility for command and control over when we became a fully endorsed unified command a little over a year ago. Djibouti's programs, or the Combined Joint Task Force Horn of Africa programs that we undertake in the eastern part of the continent, but also in other places, as I determine a skill set that they possess that's required, provide the type of training support, the type of mentoring, coaching, the type of programs that we are using along with our civil affairs activities to help the nations in Africa concentrate their efforts in causing a degree of harmonization of the training, the professionalism, as well as the regionalization of security assistance and cooperation programs that I think are proving very, very beneficial insofar as moving to the next level, the capacity of many of these African nations to increase their military and security capacity. Doing it in ways, because of our long-term approach to doing business, doing it in ways that fully integrate the elements of diplomacy, development, as well as defense, and not that we do those things, Senator, but because we understand the importance of those all activities being a part of this dynamic, the comprehensive approach, it is working.
Okay, I want to expand on that a little bit, but first, on the cuts that were there on your information operations program, are they going to hurt you? I mean, how is that serious?
It is serious. The information programs that we look to do when we were cut the $3 million, that was about a third of what we wanted to do, and the focus for those additional programs would have been in the East Africa region to complement what we're doing in the Sahel and in North Africa.
It's such a huge area, and that's I think people just don't really comprehend that. And how about any other equipment? At first, there were some problems there. Are you feel fairly comfortable with the resources that you have?
We are always looking for resources, Senator. What they have are sufficient to do the work that we want to do. We could enhance that with additional resources. But the work that we are able to do, working with those nations to include assisting them through, as was pointed out, the various programs, the 1206 program, very, very important, very beneficial as we work with the nations on their territorial security as well as their maritime security and capacity building.
Yeah, I'm running out of time here, but do this for me. The reason that our activity in Djibouti is acceptable with the rest of the continent is because we were already there. Now, it's more difficult if you're going to start anew. I have felt that as large as that continent is, we ought to have something probably in Ghana. ECOWAS is there now. There's the activities there. And maybe for the record, you could respond as to what are there any hopes for that, or if there's anything, should we continue to try to do that? And as I go around, I talk to the presidents. I find a lot of them, although there's a political problem with naming names because they don't want other people to know that they agree that we should have that kind of activity there. For the record, you might answer that. And lastly, I've been enheartened a little bit by some of the new faces in Zimbabwe that have been on the other side of Mugabe, and I feel for the first time in many years somewhat optimistic that these new faces that want to bring that country hopefully back to where it was at one time, the breadbasket of sub-Saharan Africa. Do you share that there's room for optimism now in Zimbabwe?
I do. I had a conversation with our new ambassador who's been posted there, and he's gone there, Senator, with that same sense of optimism to look to take advantage of what might be a changing political environment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator.